we'll go ahead and get started. So for anyone that this is your first time attending, my name is Basala. I am the founder of AfroKlash. It's a media platform amplifying the voices of African women and sharing their stories. And so this AfroKlash conversation series is a monthly conversation podcast series where we're just amplifying those stories. So anyone from around the world can listen in to see their favorite people share their stories. So that's what we're here for today. I don't think Annie needs any introduction, but we'll go ahead and let her do a quick intro and say hello to everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Eni, and I am known online as Any Given Sunday. That is my handle on Instagram and TikTok. If you are not familiar, you can check out my content there. I've been creating content for, I would say formally, I'm going on my 6th year. I officially launched I fell into content creation, but launched my official and intentional start into being a creator when I launched a blog in 2018 known as Any Given Sunday. And so, yeah, it's been 6 years of creating content. I created it while being a teacher, created it through law school, created while I was working at a law firm, and then almost a year ago went full time. And so I'm now currently a full-time content creator and just really excited to see all of the things that I decide to get into and what's ahead. So super excited to be here and to chat about content creation, particularly because a lot of people like to talk about like law and content creation. I'm also really excited about content creation and talking
Yeah.
about that on my own. So excited to share more about that in today's conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was telling so many people. Like when you and I first met, we talked about that, where you share so much about that viral conversation and the story about moving from law to content creation. So if anyone wants to know that story, I know Annie has done podcasts, she's talked on stages about that. So what we really wanted to do differently, because that already exists, is really just go a deep dive into content creation. How can you become a successful creator? Do you have tools, tips, tricks, and things like that? So that's what's going to be a little different from what you might have heard from Annie before. And I heard you say in your intro, you kind of fell into content creation starting out. So were you always online, like High Five, MySpace, Bebo, all the things, or how did you kind of get started in it?
Yeah, so I mean, I do remember in terms of social media, I had a MySpace when I was in middle school at some point and had an AIM username as
Yeah.
well. My MySpace, I don't think I was allowed to have, so I think it was more of like a secret type of thing. I was old enough to have it, but I
Yeah.
wasn't like, allowed by my mom to have one. But I don't know, it was like, how else do you stay in the know with what's happening, what the people are doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just funny now because now it's like I obviously like share about my like social media with my mom and I'll be like, oh, look what I did, or like send her a video or something like that.
Right.
Like I vividly remember like Xing out of tabs or like something like that. Like, oh
Yeah.
no, I should not be on MySpace. In terms of how I got started, I graduated from college and just like had an Instagram. I didn't actually have an Instagram until my freshman year of college, which was 2013. Even though I want to say it had come out it had been out, Instagram had been up and running for like, I want to say at least 2 years,
Yeah. I think it was 2011, I think.
yeah, exactly. So it had been out for 2 years, but I didn't, and I was like, oh, another. I'm so bad with this, but I was like, another social media app. Like, no, like I don't need to. But then once I got to college, I was like, all right, let me start an Instagram. And my first Instagram post was just a picture of like the freshman yard, and I was like, and the
Simple.
caption was like, yeah, I was like home for the next 4 years. Mind you, like it wasn't a picturesque like image. The
Yeah.
grass wasn't even properly like well manicured. Like chairs were thrown out across the lawn, and I used one of Instagram's like native filters, but like that was my first
Yeah.
Instagram. And so creating content, I had had an Instagram all through college and used it just for fun whenever I felt like I looked good or wanted to share. Basically, yeah, whenever I felt like I looked good, I was like, I want to post a picture. And so once I graduated and came home after college, I was just so excited to be back in New York, so excited to be in a city that wouldn't ask me where I'm going whenever they see or thought that I was dressed up. Like, so excited to just be able to do the most, to wear what I wanted to church, which was where I got dressed up the most often and the most consistently. And so every Sunday after church, I just had one of my brothers just like take a picture in the like gazebo area that was right outside my church in Brooklyn. And I posted that every Sunday, and it became a thing that people and people, by people I mean my friends who were because those were the only people who were following me at the time,
Yeah.
they knew to expect from me. So a friend came up with the name Any Given Sunday on like one random Sunday. And the rest is kind of history. I gave myself a deadline, like, okay, you've done this after, like, where are we going with this? Um,
Mm,
so I decided that I was going to launch a blog, particularly because YouTube, I mean, I did launch a YouTube as well, but I was aware of the fact that YouTube wasn't my own,
mm,
Instagram wasn't my own. And so I was like, a blog, I like to write, and a blog would be my own.
yeah,
And blog kind of signifies like, I have a website, like
yeah.
I am a creator. So I decided to launch a blog, and I did that June 1st, 2018.
Wow, that's amazing. And something that you said I wanted to kind of hone in on was when you started, right? It was just kind of fun and you're posting your outfits. And at the time, only your friends were really the people following you. And I was at CultureCon last year, and something you said that stayed with me till today is, post like no one is watching, just do your thing. Because I think that comes up a lot where people might start and then maybe they're not getting the level of engagement, especially they see other people getting numbers, or I thought I was going to get 100 likes. Back in the day, 100 likes was everything, right?
100,
Uh,
absolutely. That was the
yeah. So, but then you see people not getting that kind of engagement and they might give up or feel dejected. Like, what made you keep going?
For me, it was a genuine love for creating the content that I created.
Yeah.
Like, I there have been times where I've made videos where I'm like, this is a good video. Or
Yeah.
not even just this is a good video, but like there are certain details that like maybe I'm the only one who picked up on. Like the way
Mm.
the words, like or the way the beat aligned with the
Yes. Yes.
energy, the words, like the song choice, like certain things like that. Um,
Hmm.
that I'm just like, this is a good video, but it's good because it matches exactly what I had in my head. Like
Yeah.
video, the final result is an exact reflection of the idea that I had in my head. So the process of like bringing something to life that only
Mm.
existed in theory, that only existed in my head, that is so satisfying to me,
Yeah.
regardless whether people like see it or not, whether the algorithm pushes it or not. Just like and back when Instagram was only photos, like
Yeah.
sometimes it would be like this is a really good quality photo. Like this, like the way the light hit or the way
Right.
outfit looks, and like sometimes it would just be like, I don't really care like if people see it or not, but I'm just like, this photo might be my next background. Like, this photo is so good, and like
Yeah.
and a lot of thought, especially back in the day when I like decided to take it seriously, went into things like choosing a location for
Mm.
a photo shoot, because I would do different places in New York once I started to take it seriously. Choosing a particular outfit, choosing a series of outfits, choosing the hairstyle that would go with, choosing the jewelry,
Mm.
choosing the caption that I wanted, like, and aligning that with the blog post or a particular theme or a certain time of year. And so a lot of thought went into a lot of these things to the point where I was just like, even if nobody else picks up on it, like the fact that this picture turned out exactly how I wanted, like the fact that like the location was empty and that there was no one there, like certain things like that,
Yeah.
my true genuine love for creation and for bringing my ideas to life was enough to keep me going.
And I can hear that. I feel like, I mean, can anyone else in the chat? I can already feel the like excitement. You sound like you genuinely love it, right? But, and I think something else that you also see, like you're saying, it sounded like it was very intentional, very strategic to make this thing not just a hobby, but a career. But, knowing who you are, right? You didn't have to. You had a great educational background. You were a teacher, you were going to law school. So what was the catalyst to say? Because I'm sure it was a lot to balance all of that, to say like what kind of was really the catalyst for that passion to say, even though I'm this busy and I have all of these things going on over here, I still want to keep doing this thing.
Yeah, for me, um, it was a little bit of a lot. So I think what it was is I also knew that I needed something else.
Mm,
That I needed it, but like it was my like it counted as my hobby. And I don't think
yeah.
up until that point, I don't think I really had consistent hobbies. Um,
Mm,
I don't think there was anything that like if you asked me what I did for fun that like I would have a clear answer. It'd be like one weekend it's brunch, one weekend it's reading a book, like one weekend it's sleep, like who knows? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think like it was just the first time in my life that I had a hobby that felt consistent, and that felt and in that way it just felt new. Like I was like, oh, this is what it's like to like have a thing outside of something, outside of the
yeah.
And so for me, it was okay, I have a hobby that feels fun and exciting. I need, and a subcategory of that is like, I need something that makes, the things that I don't want to do bearable. And so like work is always going to be work.
Yeah.
But being in school is not fun. And so by having that hobby, I had a thing to kind of like, okay, when I don't want to be enveloped by the whole law school life, when I want something that's just like, I don't have to be being a lawyer or being in law school doesn't have to be my whole personality. I have something to talk about where I can just talk about something.
Yeah.
Uh, so there was that. There was also the piece of feeling like I was good at it, feeling
Mm,
like, like it's picking up, I'm growing. Um, and like I don't want to necessarily drop something if I feel like I'm seeing growth, I'm getting results. Because that's another thing, like I don't know how to say this. I feel like part of it, like, and I'm not gonna lie and sit here and say, like, yeah, you should keep going, like, no matter what, like, you should keep going if you love it.
yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie, like, if I didn't necessarily see the growth after a certain amount of time, I probably would have been less likely to continue
Going.
going. Probably would have been like, all right, God, like, I did it, like, and it was cool, or it is cool, but I don't think this is the path that I'm supposed to go down. But I wasn't getting that. I was seeing growth. I was seeing like impact. I was seeing people reaching out and saying like, this means a lot. I read this blog post, and
Mm,
it resonated with me. So it wasn't even necessarily likes and things like that.
yeah.
It was sometimes like me sharing something that was maybe vulnerable and people being like, you've put something into words that I could not put into words.
Mm,
Thank you. And so
yeah.
impact like that, I'm not like, I think it's bigger than me. And I think it would be harder for me to give up. So yeah, wanting a hobby, seeing the impact, and needing an escape were all factors that contributed to me just continuing it through law school.
I love that. And then something else you said, and I actually had a question for this was, what do you feel like was a catalyst to that growth? Like, did you feel like you did something, like one day you started doing this thing differently, and then all of a sudden the numbers skyrocketed? Or was it just a slow and steady? It's still slow and steady. Or this day I started using this filter, or I started talking this way, or I started putting captions on my video, and then all of a sudden it jumped. Was there one thing you, or two things you feel like you did that really changed the trajectory of your career?
Yeah, I would say there was intentional strategy on my end. So
Mm,
initially the strategy, and so when I started it was around 2018, 2019, 2017 to 2019, let's say. My
yeah.
strategy, I feel like back then that this was Instagram because I didn't get onto TikTok until maybe
Okay.
2020.
2020, yeah.
But for Instagram, it was a time when there were a lot of like repost accounts. So like there were a lot of accounts that kind of were like Tumblr in the sense that like take for example a page like
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Melanin Makeup Daily, right?
yeah.
Or like
Yes, yes.
Dark Skin Women United, like pages like
I
that where
remember. Then you would tag like 20 of them. People would tag
exactly.
20 of them in their pictures, I remember.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a time where people were tagging all of these repost pages,
Yep.
hopes of getting reposted onto pages because
Yep.
those were the pages that had a pretty strong,
Hmm.
engaged, active audience. And so there was that component, like getting reposted onto those repost pages. And then
Yeah.
there was also the component of getting reposted onto brand pages. So to do that, I might strategically do a video of just full face of something to get reposted onto the brand's page. So it almost in a way was kind of like creating free like free videos.
Branded content.
Yeah, free branded content because and that's to say that like I wasn't in the beginning like, like if you want my video, you need to pay me. Like, no, I very much so was creating content that I wanted them to take and post because
Mhm.
they also had large audiences that could potentially like if they reposted me, I would reach their audience. So if anything, it was like, I don't know how I'm going to reach people except for going where they already are. And a lot of people were following brands, a lot of people were following these repost pages. And so I was like, I'm going to be there. If they're going to be scrolling on a page that's not mine, like, how can I be there? How can I get there? So that was my strategy to start. So that involved like accepting products, being on Octoly and getting, free products so that I had things to make videos with, had things to review. So that was the initial strategy.
Yeah.
Once I started to, then I of course would use my life. So a part of that, once people would come to the page, like I would just share about my life, and I
Yeah.
would go in a routines based way. And that was true to myself, right? Because I was big on
Sure.
routines, but it was also easy for me to maintain. Posting about routines isn't just about like, like what it is I actually do. It is what I actually do, but it also gives me a source of content every single day, right? Like, and I don't have to think about it. I'm going to the gym every day, which means I
Yeah.
can post a gym story every day. I'm making my morning tea every day. I'm filling up my water bottle every day. Like that is true. Like it's like it
Yeah.
gives a source of content, a source of consistent content to the point where it's like, even if I don't know how I'm going to show up, I know at the very
Got
least
that.
show up through that.
Yeah.
Uh, Once Reels became a thing and once TikTok became a thing, well, and okay, I'll try and keep this brief. TikTok was an entirely different strategy.
Yeah.
Had continued to grow on Instagram by sharing about law school, by just like I was starting to get people who were following me for because I was in law school and sharing that content, and it was a network that was building.
Yeah.
But I'm still primarily beauty on Instagram. And so when I started on TikTok, I initially was resistant, was reluctant, and I did not want to be on the app really. People hear things about data and privacy, and I
Yeah.
was dance app. So I was like, none of this. I'm not about to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I also say I was similarly reluctant to Reels, which like that became a catalyst for growth on Instagram. Like that
Mhm.
absolutely was.
Yeah.
TikTok. So once I went on TikTok, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna create an account. I'm gonna lurk. And TikTok, like usually is ahead of the game of trends about like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So if an audio is trending on TikTok, like in 2 to 3 weeks, it'll probably be trending on Instagram. And so I was like, I'm gonna lurk and I'm gonna
Mhm.
be one of the first people to be on the trends on Instagram. And then the narrative just kept being like, you're gonna get left behind if you are not like
Yeah.
posting and TikTok. So for that, I kind of had to read the room, and I was like, truthfully, like when new people, it's a lot harder to be a new person on the scene.
Yeah.
'Cause I was a little late. It's a lot harder to be a new person on the scene and talk about something that almost everyone talks about or that everyone can talk about. Like if I show up and if I act like I'm an influencer and I'm like, hey guys, like these are the products that you should use. Like, hey guys, like this is da 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 da. Like people are gonna be like, who are you? Like why you just got here, right? And so my strategy for that was to talk about something that less people would be able to talk about the thing that maybe in the space made me more unique. And so on TikTok in particular, I leaned into law student lifestyle videos. I did a lot of
Mm.
day in my life as a Columbia law student, and I just also shared thoughts that were pretty similar to what I would share in blog posts, pretty
Yeah.
similar to what I might write in a journal. But that really resonated with people. But then through that, like through my routines, through my days in the life, I would highlight certain products. I would show what I was using to shower. I would show what I'd be using as skincare. I'd show what I'm using to type or to take class notes. And then the questions about, okay, well, what's this? What's that? Like I hear what you're saying, but what? And so my strategy was to come in and lead with being a law student first, because
Yeah.
that like reach
It's
people.
common. Yeah.
Exactly. That would be more prominent. And then follow through with the beauty and the lifestyle and all of the other things. So there were a lot of different strategies at different phases of my content creator journey.
I love that. And that even ties into another question I had around niches, right? Because there's so much advice. If you want to be a creator, you have to have a niche, because to your point, so that people know if I go to Eni's page, I'm going to find content on this. But there's also the other argument where, we're so multifaceted, we're so diverse. Should you really balloon yourself or put yourself in one box and say, this is the only thing I'm going to be known for? So what's your stance starting out? Should you have a niche, focus on one thing, or should you be, have your whole self online? You're funny, you're dynamic, you love fashion, you love beauty, you love lifestyle, you love fitness, or focus on one thing, grow the numbers, and then introduce other parts of yourself. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, my opinion on that is that when starting out, niches are helpful, but a lot of times I feel like the framing of why people should have niches more audience focused. And I think
Mhm.
niches are actually more helpful for us as creators when we are starting out, so as to not
Yeah.
get overwhelmed and so as to not get distracted with all of the different possibilities we can take or all of the different routes we can go. So I think having a niche is helpful because it's like if you have a niche, producing ideas might be easier because you're like, you know, kind of one track minded. Repeating, being consistent might be easier because maybe you're repeating a certain style of content. And versus like, you know, trying to figure out a film setup for a cooking video versus trying to figure out a film setup for a makeup or beauty tutorial versus trying to figure out a film setup for a hair tutorial, and just like working out, like each of those videos are so different and so unique that yes, it's you can be the right person to share all of those things, but the process of creating the content for each of those things might take a lot more out of you. And so sometimes it's like nail the consistency, and sometimes it's easier to nail the consistency when you have a niche. But I think niches are more so helpful for us as creators than they are particularly for an audience, because if you are a lovable person online, if you are a likable person online, like people will like whatever it is.
Yeah.
I also say like leave room, and you know, I'm not gonna say like stick with a niche forever, like leave
Right.
room for, you know, to be open, leave room for people to ask you questions that don't have anything to do with your niche. And then if you reply and it's a video that blows up, you're like, maybe I should talk about this more often. So
Yeah.
I think in the preliminary stages, it's good to have a niche to just stay focused as a creator.
Yeah, that's so good. And even to that, I wanted to ask, because people say, tied to that argument, and say it's important to have a niche so that if you want to work with brands, brands know what they can come to you for. So what was your experience, especially starting out? You know, you still had lower numbers than you have now. What was your strategy around working with brands? Were you doing all of the pitching? How did you get into those rooms and conversations to get yeses to working with your dream brands?
Yeah, I rarely did pitching.
Mhm.
I honestly, I didn't really love, not that I didn't love the concept of it, but like to me, it was just a level of work that I didn't really want to do.
Yeah.
But also on top of that, like when I say like money was not at all the goal for me with
Mhm.
content, like it wasn't. That was a time when I don't even think conversations about the amount of money that people made being an influencer, like I don't know if it was as public as
Yeah.
it is now. And so like for me, I genuinely was just like, I just want to grow. Like I
Mhm.
like for me, I'm like, you know, like it was just like I just want to grow a community. I just want more
Yeah.
followers. Like truthfully, like
Yeah.
product would be nice so that I don't have to pay for certain things. But in terms of
Mhm.
like making money, that really wasn't a goal of mine. And I think that was just reflected in the fact that I never really pitched. And like until I signed, like I looked at some templates, I reached out to brands every now and then, but like I don't really recall it being a consistent part of my
Mhm.
routine because I don't really think I was focused on like I didn't make getting paid as a creator a goal of mine, truthfully.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that in itself, right, is a blessing, right? Because you see so many people that if they want to start as full-time content creators, sometimes they might quit their job and say, this is what I'm doing. Now there's so much pressure on your creativity to pay your bills and do this thing. Now you're pitching and you're not getting what you want. You almost lose your creativity because you feel this need to be paid, where it sounds like you almost had the freedom to be creative and innovate new ideas because you didn't feel the need to show up for a specific brand when you were starting out. That sounds
100%.
good. So now that you're kind of where you are, obviously you work with brands now. So do you feel like most of that is just organic, where it comes to you because of who you are and the community you've grown and things like that? Is that just kind of organic that it comes to you now?
Yeah, a lot of it is organic. A lot of it comes to me through my inbox. I am also now signed to management, and so they might pitch me for things and they'll let me know when something comes in particularly for me. But a lot of opportunities come in on a day-to-day basis through my inbox without me necessarily like just reaching out or pitching. If my management like does pitch, like sometimes it'll be impacted by maybe what I particular goals I have, but um, truthfully, like it's not very rare. Like it's more rare for me to say like I want to work with this particular brand
Yeah.
because for me, like I don't know, this might be I don't know how to describe this. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I have. But I
Nice.
think a lot of times when we have conversations about like working with brands and like when we talk about like, oh, I got to work with my dream brand or things like that, like it takes away from the value that we bring to the table in a way. Like, I'm always going to be grateful, I really am, but I'm also just like, like, okay, yeah, like they do want to work with you. Like this is an
Yeah.
exchange. Like, so I feel like sometimes when we're like, oh, like this is my dream brand. Like they want to work with me. Like, I'm so grateful. And I'm just like,
You're
yeah,
the dream person. Yeah.
yeah, like you're doing work. You have something that they want.
Yeah.
You are doing work. This is not just like, you got handpicked for something that you didn't deserve or work for. This is like,
Yeah.
well, like, there are people behind these brands who are, people just like us. And so they see something because we're putting something out there. So
Yeah.
that's just to say that, like, sometimes I think the concept of a dream brand list is like overrated. Not over, yeah, a little overrated, because I'm just like, also too, like sometimes it's the same structure. Like sometimes it's just like you're
Yeah.
doing the same thing for them. They send you a product, they give you a brief, you make content in the parameters of what they're giving you, right? Like, and
Yeah.
then post it, and that's it. And it's the same kind
Mm.
of structure in a way. So I think I'm moving away from the idea of like dream brands, and more so like, what are the partnerships? What are the new ways that I want to partner with brands? What are the new ways I can like think through like building my own community and prioritize building my community, as opposed to prioritize like working with brands as the only vehicle for making money.
Yeah, and that's so good. And something you mentioned as well was, now it all comes through your management company. So how did that happen? Obviously when you started, you didn't have management, we weren't working with an agency. Was like, how did that come to be? Was it the same thing where they reached out to you and said, we would love to represent you? Or did you get to a point where you felt like you needed management?
Yeah, the two kind of coincided. So around my second year of law school, started my third year of law school. Yes, started my third year of law school. Things were picking up. I would be getting more, outreach in my inbox. And I was like, dang, like I really feel like I need some help. I didn't
Mm.
really know what the options for help were out there, but now I know, like, it's like you can get help like assistance, like an assistant,
Mhm.
or you can get help like management, like help like someone to help negotiate the deals. And I was more so looking like for help with someone to like negotiate the deals, manage all of the inquiries coming in my inbox. And around like October 2021, a management agency reached out, and they like, that was the first time I had ever gotten outreach from a management agency. And I was like, oh, like this is perfect timing, because I was just talking about how I need this help. And so we did a trial, and then so it was like a 3-month trial. I wasn't like fully like, they definitely helped. So they helped in the sense of like numbers that I had never seen before. Like I was just like, oh, like, a lot of people talk about management and they're like, but they take a cut, like, they
Mm.
take 50%. And there was one particular deal I remember where like I had already locked in with the brand, not signed anything, but like pretty much told them my rate. Let's say like I told them my rate was like 1,000. And the management agency, once they came, they were like, let's revisit this conversation, because Eni has since signed with management, or like Eni is now working
Mm.
with us. And the final number that they were able to get the brand to land on was 7,000, right? As opposed
Wow.
to like 1,000 or maybe 1,500 that I had originally said. And so I'm like,
Wow.
on my own, I'm not even getting 80% of what
Right.
you
You just got
got.
me. Yeah.
So like the 20%, you could have that.
Right.
Like, because what am I going to be clamoring for 20% when like you gave me like 500% of what I originally thought? So it was definitely like think big moment. And
Mhm.
like why, like it was definitely a moment where I saw the value of having a management, to the point where like that 15-20% was justified.
Yeah.
We extended the trial around like March is when it was like about to come to an end, and I had to decide to sign for a year. I didn't necessarily feel like it was a fit, and I'm really lucky in this way, because even though I didn't feel like it was a fit, I would have still been willing to sign for the full year, because I was just starting out, and that probably would
Yeah.
have been a bad move. I
Mm.
was I was gonna still be willing to sign for the full year, because I was like, well, hey, like I need the help, like
Mhm.
I don't want to go back to doing this on my own. But around that time, another management agency had reached out. And this was one that I thought like that had been on my like, wow, like everyone on their roster, like are heavy hitters in the industry. Like I really want to be, but like in my mind, I was like, this is a goal that I still have to work towards, because it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy you have to be on a certain caliber or level, and I'm not there yet. So I was like, I'm gonna keep working. And so when they reached out, I was like, what? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? Like, you know, and so they reached out kind of at the perfect time, signed with them, did a trial period, but then also just like that trial period led into me signing with them fully. So all of the times that I have like, and now I've since moved to a different management, which is where I am now, but all the times that I have worked with management thus far has been agencies reaching out to me. But I will say there is definitely value. And around the time that I transitioned from that second agency to the one that I am now, like had to have more conversations, had to just like connect with people and just realize that I didn't have to be a passive recipient of a lot of these things. And that I also had like, should feel empowered to like ask questions, to feel like it doesn't have to be this or that. It can be like none of you all together and somebody else that's not even in the picture right now, because like I
Yeah.
don't just go with what's presented in front of me.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm definitely still learning and realizing, and like that I, especially now as a full-time creator, like feel a lot more empowered about, because before,
Mhm.
like I approached it that way because everything was just like, well, this is just for fun. Like this is just
Mhm.
this is not even what I'm doing. Like this is just the
Yeah.
cherry on top. And so when you have that mentality or mindset, it makes it a lot easy to be like, well, I don't really care how it goes because I'm not even supposed to be doing this at all. Like I don't even care if I get any money at all because like this is the side hustle anyways.
Right.
And so now that I've shifted to doing it full time, it's like, okay, well, this is the business now. Like this is
Yeah.
job, and so like let's treat it as such, and let's be a little bit more let's take a little bit more ownership and have more agency over
Yeah.
some of the that we're making.
Yeah, and so something so that I wanted to dive deeper into. So do you have to, from your experience or what you know about the industry, do you have to have a certain criteria to even be considered by an agency, a certain amount of following, or can someone that's kind of 10K, 5K followers, are you also eligible, or is there certain eligibility criteria to even be considered to have management?
Yeah, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule about like how many followers that you need. I think from my just like viewpoint, they consistent across the board, like they want to work with potential. It doesn't have to be fully realized in the form of followers, but it's like if it's clear that you can grow, if it's clear that you're growing rapidly, or that you're growing at all, like, or if it's clear that you have a really engaged audience. I think engagement is really key, because like brands can tap into that. Brands, you can have a lot of followers and not that much engagement, and agencies might be a little reluctant to work with you because like a brand is also going to see that, and it might be hard for them to get
Yeah.
brand deals for you. The whole reason like an agency is making money off of the deals that you
Right.
bring in, honestly. So engagement, if anything, is really, really important. Just looking like you're growing, that you're building an audience, that you're tapped into community is all really important as well. So yeah, what they are going to care about is just like, is this someone who can work with brands? Is this someone
Mhm.
who has something to offer brands? That's not going to be it though, because there are a lot of creators who just have really large and engaged audiences that maybe are still struggling to tap into brand partnerships, or maybe simply don't want to, and maybe they have other ways that they want to monetize their platform.
Yeah.
That would be fine as well. But brand deals just appears as the easiest and like quickest and
Mhm.
most common way. But like there are some people who might just want to monetize in the form of starting a podcast or
Yeah.
a product or things like that. So as long as you can like monetize in some way, I think that's what they're looking for, because they do have to keep their doors open and lights on
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, great answer. If anyone has any additional questions about management or agency, drop it in the Q&A box. So I want to pivot a little bit to more of the personal side, right, of content creation, because I mean, there's so much research out there right now about mental health and social media and the long-term effects about having our lives online in the way that it's never been before and seeing so many other people's lives. So obviously you're a human being, right? And you have feelings and you have days where you're not 100%, but this is your job now, right? You really have to show up a lot of the time. So how do you balance that where you have off days, but maybe you have a piece of content that has to go up, or you feel like you have to be online, but you're just not having a day where you just kind of want to be logged off. So how do you kind of balance that mental feeling with this is your job?
Yeah. So when it comes to like needing to post maybe on a day when I'm not feeling it. Like sometimes if needed, like I will tell a brand like, is it possible to go live on this day? Because like I'm not gonna really be able to. And that's not just about like the mental health piece, like that's about sometimes logistics. Like
Yeah.
sure, you can have me post on this day, but I'm gonna be on a 15-hour flight and I won't be able to engage with the comments, and not being able to engage with the comments is probably gonna tank viewership because that's like what the algorithm rewards or something like that. But the same would apply if I'm not feeling well, if I'm like sick, or if I'm like also just like need a break from
Mhm.
online. Like it's like I could post it, but I'm gonna post in ghost. So like, and I don't
Yeah.
want that, but like I really need to. The balance also sometimes like I've gotten a lot better at this, like realizing that a lot of times it's not that deep. Um, or reminding myself that I have nothing to prove, because
Mm.
sometimes like especially as someone who's routines based,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll like feel a need to post because like people will be like, oh, like, you know, people who go to the gym, like they didn't go unless they posted a selfie, right? And like even something small like that where I'm just like, no, like I went to the gym. I know
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
doesn't posted today. Like I have nothing to prove. Like I think by this point, like the community that I have like knows that like whether or not she posted it, like she's doing it. And the point is not like post everything that I do. The point is like know that I'm a disciplined person, know that I'm an organized person, and one day of not posting it online is not going to change like who I am as a person. So a lot of times I just have to remind myself, like, yeah, you have nothing to prove. Like, it's really not that deep. A lot of self-talk, a
Yeah.
lot of talk has to go into managing and like just staying sane while being online, and not dwelling on trolls comments, and not
Yeah.
dwelling on comments that might not have meant to be rude or mean, but are. So yeah, I would say all those things.
Yes. Do you personally feel like social media has had an impact on you mentally, physically, where maybe before when you didn't have so many numbers, you didn't have any pressure, where now you're growing and so many people know who you are. Do you feel a certain kind of pressure, or I don't know, like do you ever have some days where maybe I don't want to do this anymore? Do you ever question it because of the toll that sometimes might come with it?
Yeah, no, I never question whether or not I want to do it anymore. I don't think it really has taken a toll. Um, but I have to catch myself sometimes because I'll do like be careful what you wish for. Um,
Mm,
like it would be very nice, and like theoretically what I'm working for or on is like rapid growth. Like it's like, you know, everybody's like, I have this goal, I want to hit so and so by the end of the month, like I want to
yeah,
hit like whatever. And I'm like, you know, some days I might be like, oh, it would be really nice to like hit 1 million like tomorrow, like that would be great.
yeah,
But I'm also aware that rapid growth usually comes with like a lot. It
yeah,
comes with a lot. It comes with probably like a lot of people talking about you for some particular reason. It usually comes with a lot of viral moments that usually like a viral moment, like it's very rare that there are genuine 100% like truly
yeah,
nice, uncontroversial viral moments. Most of the time, a viral moment is going to have some sort of like negativity around it. Like someone's going to find something negative to say, like if it's the sweetest, you know, video of a child, something, you know, and people are gonna be like,
yeah,
oh, parent, like I would never do, like, you know,
yeah,
like there's always like that's why I'm like, anytime I see a viral video, I'm like, oh, I wonder what the
yeah,
negative around this one was, because I just
yeah,
know it
yeah,
was there. And so I have to remind myself, like the path that I've been on and the path that I'm on now is like gradual growth, like very, very gradual. And I feel like when the growth is very gradual, it is because people are joining that you want to be there.
mm,
It is because there is an intentionality behind the way that you are growing,
yeah,
um, that is planned for and that is accounted for. And that is what I want. And I have to tell myself that that means that it might look slower, it might take longer, it might be like a few more years till we
it's
hit.
the people that you want to see. Yeah,
Yeah, but like I would rather it be people that like are going to stay, that aren't gonna leave because I stopped talking about this, or that aren't gonna
yeah,
leave because I left a job, or that aren't gonna leave because like some big life transition or change has happened, and that they're gonna stay because they're like this is the same person who like I came for. And not like, you're not making these type of videos anymore. You're not doing this
Okay.
type of, that the viral moment was. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know if you saw this video or if anyone, if you saw this video, let me know in the chat. It's been trending in the last week. Her name is Vanessa Lau. She's been all over YouTube in the last week. She had a seven-figure content creation business, but then she just came back. She took a year off, all of 2023, shut down her business. Like I think she had like passive streams of income, but her core business, she shut it down because she just didn't feel like she wanted to be online. She felt all of these pressures to show up and be this person. So she just came back kind of sharing the story. And one of the things she shared in the video were like 3 traps she fell into that made her shut down her business, which was a comparison trap. You know, this person is doing better than me, or this person has more numbers, this person is getting the brand partnerships, and like a scale trap. If I'm not growing, I'm not loved, no one likes me, et cetera, et cetera. And then also the identity trap where you kind of start becoming other people. You know, if like say you're on TikTok and now you see this creator every day and they talk this way or dress this way, and now you're dressing like them. So I wonder, do you kind of have any of those? Do you feel like sometimes you compare yourself, or even if you don't, if you have advice for anyone here that has any of those issues, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, comparison is very, very easy of a trap to fall into. It
Yeah.
absolutely is. And it'll be a trap that'll also seep into the scale trap, because like you can see like so and so was here and now they've passed me.
Yeah.
Like so and so, like you can
Yeah.
see.
It's
It's a very,
visual.
very, very easy trap to fall into. It's funny because I have a life coach and I was actually talking to her about comparison last week, because I was like, I feel like I'm teetering like into the
Mm,
comparison space. And we like were able to parse out the different, like we were able to talk through like what are the benefits or and the disadvantages of comparison. And that helped me parse through like the times where it might be helpful or necessary and the times where it's like not. And obviously there are more times where it's not helpful than when it is, but it's like
yeah.
something as small of a nuance as like sometimes comparison is helpful when there's like a particular purpose behind it
Mhm.
or a question that you're trying to get answered. So like, for example, the question might be, are people's views down lately? Like,
Mhm.
so I want to go see, like, I'm comparing myself to other people to see, like, you know, is it just me or are the views down lately? It's kind of like in class, like, you know, did everybody fail the test? Because if
Yeah.
everybody failed the test, like maybe then it was just a hard test and it's
Yeah.
not like about me. And that's a particular question that you have that you want answered versus just aimlessly scrolling and being like, dang, like, why can't I be like her? Like, why
Mhm.
can't people like me the way they like her? Like, that's not really like I mean, it is a question, but it's not like in the sense of
Productive. Yeah.
target like this. I'm looking for an answer and I'm looking to see like if I can get the particular answer. And so that's been helpful for me because I'm like, okay, like if I have a particular question, then I might be able to go to management and say like,
Mhm.
how can we strategize? Or then I might be able to go to, you know, the friends at TikTok, like what's going on, what's trending right now, things like that, versus just like wanting to be someone else. I
Mhm.
think that comparison, like that, the 3 breakdown, like comparison trickles down into both, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're comparing yourself to others, you don't know who you are, and you're comparing yourself to how others are scaling.
Yeah.
And so for me, I really, when I struggle with it, like in my truest, like I know this is what I should be doing for him. Doesn't mean I always do it, but like I know at the end of the day, like this is the answer. It's like I need to read my Bible, I need to pray. Like I'm getting caught up in who other people are, and that's not at all what I'm supposed to be doing because like my path is my path, and I absolutely have to trust that like God has a very specific plan for me, and I have to trust that that's the best plan. And I need to internalize and
Mm.
understand what it means for something to be the best plan for me. Like I really need to understand that because I could be chasing a certain number of followers, I could be chasing a
Yeah.
certain number of things. Meanwhile, there's a whole bigger opportunity that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with followers that I'm like, this
Yeah.
is, and I was chasing something else that absolutely wasn't for me. And so I just have to remind myself, I have to read my Bible. I have to just like be like the plans that are for me are mine, like my
Yeah.
name is on them. And they may not have anything to do, like I may never reach the 1,000,000 followers, but it doesn't mean that like the plans that God has for me won't come to pass and won't lead to a path of success and of impact and of reaching people. And so that's how I like to like that's how I like to deal with comparison. Like what is for me will be mine. As long as I'm working, as long as I'm consistent, as long as I'm disciplined, the things that are mine, like they will be mine. I just need to stay the course and focus on what's in front of me.
So if we were in a room right now, this is where everyone would be doing snaps. We're doing the snaps. That was so, so good. And I know we've asked a lot of questions, and I hope this has been helpful for so many of you. I know it's been helpful for me. But if you have a direct question for Eni, you can either drop it in the Q&A, or if you want to ask your question live, just raise your hand and we'll get you off mute. So does anyone have any questions about content creation, strategy, anything like that? I'm sure I can go back and see. All right, you raised your hand. All right, let me get you off mute. Okay. If you come off mute, we should be able to hear you. Hello?
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so very much for hosting this, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. You really gave us some gems. Originally, I was about to ask, what are you anchored in? Especially you can get lost on social media. Well, I just learned that you're anchored in Christ, which is amazing. I'm on my own journey as well. And now I'm curious, what can you retire in content creating now? Because I just graduated college and God's going to use me in my workplace, but I definitely want that outlet of creativity. So if he calls me to do that same leap of faith and be on, the content creating journey, do people retire in that atmosphere, or how does that work?
Great question.
And do you plan to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. The thing about content creation is it is so new that we haven't really seen someone who has had a full career of it to know fully the answer to that question. I remember when Instagram turned 10 years old, which might have been around 2021, 2022, like my reflection on that was like, this app that now is a source of people's income did not exist 10 years ago, which means 10 years ago, if you would ask someone what their job, who's an influencer, like what their job, what they wanted to do, they wouldn't have said the thing that they are now doing because it did not exist, right? Like they would, whoever was an influencer in 2022 and doing it full time, if you ask them back in 2010 what they wanted to do when they grow up, what they wanted to be when they grow up, the job did not exist. So in that regard, it's like, we don't fully know. However, being a content creator is just an arm of entrepreneurship. And so in that same, and entrepreneurs have been around like forever. And so can entrepreneurs retire? Yes, absolutely. Is it a little dicier when the entrepreneurship that you are in the business of involves your likeness and your likability? Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. And so I think for a lot of content creators, being a content creator is not the end game. I don't think a lot of people are like, I want to be posting my face on Instagram forever, and I want to depend on brands for money forever. I do not think that is a lot of what influencers are into or like want in the long run. I think a lot of times it'll be some influencers are transitioning back to full-time work, to full-time corporate work. A lot of influencers are figuring out new ways to monetize through creating their own brands, through creating their own businesses. I think we're going to see a lot more of that because that is a lot, not that it's a lot more stable because it's still entrepreneurship, but that is something where if Instagram shuts down tomorrow, you might still have income. That is something that if people hate you tomorrow, but they were never buying their products based on whether they liked you or hated you, you would still have income. And so I think it's really just an extension of entrepreneurship in that sense. And it's an expression of creativity, but like you can always take the nice pictures, whether or not you post them. You can always edit videos, or you can transition that into something more formal. Some of the people who I see on TikTok, I'm like, you might want to go into production. Like you could be producing some digital shorts or some documentary or something because you are already doing it. And so I think it's really just about tapping into viewing content creation as just a reflection of the things that you are already talented in and figuring out a way to apply those talents in new ways. But we haven't seen anyone retire, like we haven't seen anyone who's been a content creator for 40 years because that is not possible. But at the same time, our generation is not really a generation that is the type to stay in a certain career for 40 years too. And so I think in that way, the jump arounds that you might see content creators experience is pretty much consistent with how our generation is moving about careers in general too.
Definitely. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Thank you so much. All right, we have Kate up next. All right, Kate, you're up.
Hey guys, just wanted to thank you both for being here. I learned so much. Annie, I did have a question. So for me right now, my biggest struggle is consistency and like finding the time as also someone who works full time and is a student. So I kind of wanted to know like what was your strategy since I know like from watching your content, you are a very disciplined person. Like how did you set your schedule up? Like did you batch create content? How was that whole process for you?
Yeah. I will say being a full-time, being a student and working is totally different. So I would give yourself grace with that regard, because like that's like 3 jobs that you're kind of on your plate. But my strategy, I would say, yeah, there was a decent amount of batch content creation. Also, luckily, when I started, like I still started in a photo heavy time period, and that was like a good thing for me. I would say people starting now, like have it a little bit tougher because we're in a video led time period, and videos are a lot more challenging and a lot more time consuming to create. So at the time where I was creating content, I maybe most 2 Saturdays a month, but when it got tricky, like maybe 1 Saturday a month, I would pick out 3 to 4 outfits, pick out 2 to 3 locations that were close enough to each other, tell my little brother we're going to so and so, are you free on this day? Pull up with the camera, pull up with the outfits, change in changing rooms and maybe Soho, Zara or something like that, like in random stores or restaurants, just change there and continue and take the photos. And now I would have 4 weeks, 4 Sundays set out for me of outfits, right? Like, so once I moved past that, like once I created consistently, I moved past just taking pictures after church. And it was like, I just need a post on Sunday. And so like I would have just a batch photo. I would just do a big content photo shoot, maybe like once a month. And that was easy because take the photos, might take 5 hours on a Saturday to do that. And then I'm editing and like I've just applied a filter or a preset or something and I'm good to go. When video came out and then quarantine also happened, that was a little trickier because can't depend on photos, can't go out. I based a lot of what I filmed and created around my schedule. So even now, like someone commented or like sent me a message today, like we miss your outfit reels. I haven't posted them because I haven't been going anywhere, and I'm not gonna post a video. Like I'm not gonna create content if it means I'm gonna go out of my way to do something or I have to go out of my way to do it. I'm not really going to film a makeup video unless it's sponsored. I'm not gonna film a makeup video unless I'm going somewhere. So in that way, it was a little more haphazard, but not really haphazard, because it's like, okay, if I have a gala that I'm going to, let me get ready and let me film it. But I would have to know what I wanted to film. So am I going to just do a get ready with me? Am I going to do an eyeshadow tutorial? Am I going to do something very specific? So what happened, like what it would take is just the planning to know that once I want to turn that camera on, like I know exactly what I'm doing. So really it was just like Saturdays were my big content days. Maybe Thursday, it depended on my class schedule as well, but I don't think I was really getting or creating content outside of like the weekend. And then once finals came around, like I would just share with my community, like it's finals. I'm not about to be present. Like this is a very busy time period, and I would give myself that grace, maybe just show up on stories. For videos for TikTok, like that I could do more consistently, because take a 1 second video and when you take 21 second videos throughout your day, like you have a TikTok, like you have a short video, you have something there. So it was more so like whenever I wanted to take a study break, whenever I was no longer in the mood to do the reading, like I would always have energy to create content. And so that kind of was a little bit more sporadic, but it was in that way how I was able to be consistent. It's like I genuinely wanted to do it. It was like my treat. It was like my reward for making it through certain readings.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I just had a quick follow-up. So in terms of consistency wise, especially for like a beginner, I know there's like a lot of like conversation around how many times a week should you be posting, especially on like apps like TikTok. So for you, like what would you suggest?
It's tough because truly in the beginning, you have to train the algorithm,
Okay.
and that requires like, I would say like everyday posting on TikTok. Like really and truly, like it's like, hey, don't forget me. And even now, like it is still a goal of mine to post every single day on TikTok, but I know I don't necessarily have to. But like, was I posting every day on TikTok in law school? Not really. I think people, yes, but no. So I think when you hear everyday posts, like it's about differentiating between the high effort videos and the really low effort videos. So like the day in the life were high effort videos because they required full days, and they required certain schedules of my day. Like they required interesting days. But sometimes I would be sitting at my desk and have an idea, and like maybe it was just I'm filming an 8-second video and putting text over it and using the trending sound. And that was very, very low effort, but that would tick my box for the day. I would say don't force it. Like don't always force it, but like if you lean into don't force it and you find yourself going a week without posting, then you might have to force it. Like missing a day or two or three, like fine. But I would say like once every day, maybe once every 2 days is really like a really good goal to have for making sure that the algorithm doesn't forget you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kate. All right, we have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask them any. So Kamari wants to know, what amount of time should it take a new content creator to see significant growth in? I'm sure it's different based on everyone, so probably from your experience.
Yeah, that's pretty tough to know because it's just tough. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on, well, how much content are you putting out? It depends on the quality of the content being put out. Because again, it's not just quantity, it's also like quality as well. I would say personally, if I did not see some sort of growth in a year when I started, I probably might have considered like, like I might have been like, it's been a year. So I think I typically, and a lot of creators, like usually use years as like the big like standard for what the growth was. Like I start the year and I'm like, this is my goal for the year. I don't think I really have I don't have follower goals for the month. Actually, now that I think about it, I actually don't. I don't say like, this is what I want to hit towards the end of the month. I'll say like, this is the next milestone. And like, that's what I'm working towards, but I don't think I have goals for growth and community outside of like the year marker. So I would say I would personally use a year, like years as the marker and standard. And I would be realistic based on like what my rate of growth is, right? Like some people might start at 5K and their goal for the year might be to grow to 10K. And some people might start at 10K and knowing the rate at which they got to 10K might be like, my goal is 50K for the end of the year. Like it really just depends on a lot of different factors.
Yeah. And Kamari, if you have any additional questions, just put it in the chat and we can add more to that. Pam wants to know, what are some projects you're working on currently or in the future? Will you go back into law? What are some other ventures you're involved in or looking into? She said entertainment deals, TV, podcast, book deals, clothing line, makeup line, etc. So basically anything that people can expect from you in the future.
She wants all the tea. I'm very big on doing it and then talking about what you've done. So I can't fully say like everything that I'm working on. the will you go back into law is a question that I get very frequently, and I have thoughts on the question. Here's what I'll say. I mean, I'll be honest and say probably not. And I will say probably not because there's nothing I miss about it. If you see me and you see my life, like I would hope, or you see that like I'm very happy. I'm very happy with my life. And so going back to law, considering the fact that I'm very happy and considering the fact that I don't necessarily miss it, would probably be for no other reason than to say I am back in law, and that doesn't serve anyone, myself included. And so whenever like I get asked that question, like part of me wants to like really start a discussion on like, why would you, like, based on what you see of my life and like based on how you see like what it appears my experience is, like what would be the reasons that I would go back into law based on the fact that, you know, I'm more fulfilled, I'm less anxious, I get to do things on my own time, I get to do the things that I want to do. And so I feel really happy about the fact that I've like relinquished the idea that I need to like say I'm a lawyer. Because that was a struggle when I left. That was a struggle for a long time. And when I left, I immediately was like, I need to find another job. I need to find another job. And it's like, it's not like I'm struggling financially. It's not like I'm struggling in terms of purpose or direction or career. I know for a fact I can't go back to working for someone in an office. And like, if you've ever made the transition from working to someone to working for yourself, like you probably know like how difficult it is to go back to being on someone's time, having to answer to someone else, having to, you know, check in before you can do something like, and I'm at the space where I'm like, oh, I feel free. I feel very free. And I feel like that makes sense for me. And I always knew I was not a corporate girl. In terms of like going back to law, like, you know, starting my own law firm or doing things like that, because I get that question a lot as well. I don't have enough experience to just up and leave and open my own law firm. It's like, it would almost be the equivalent of going a med school student who has not finished their residency, like opening their own practice. And like, it's like, would you trust that person? Like there's a level of responsibility that you have to take. And so I'm like, I'm not trying to downplay it and say like I did go to law school, I do know some things, but also like you do need some level of experience in order to do that. And it's not just like, oh, open a firm or start your own thing. And so what I will say is I'm very happy. If there is a time where I go back to missing it, if there's a time where I feel led to go back to law, like I absolutely would. But I don't know. I don't necessarily, I no longer believe in doing things to say that you do them. I want to do the things that actually like have impact and align with like what my passions are at the time as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I know we're a little over time. So if you need to go, just drop some love in the chat for Eni so she can see it, and just tell her how much, you know, this chat helps you in any way. But we have a couple more questions, Eni, if you have some time to answer. I think we have two more. So Esther, your question is pretty long. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question live?
I've read it. I had a chance to read it.
Okay.
And I think that seems how hold on, I'm taking my business, however now I'm seeking.
Innovative ways.
I hope I'm not gonna know. I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that, because I will acknowledge that there is a difference between being a content creator for your personal brand and being a content creator for a business. So hopefully, I think if you don't have a conversation for that lined up, like that could be a good another part of the series to have. I think that would actually be a good conversation to have in general, because I don't want to take the space of like, you know, saying that you can do certain things to grow a business community, because based on even what I've seen from working with brands, it is a very different ballgame to try and grow a community for a product or for a business. So I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to answer that question. And then the last one, lawyer realized that law is very jealous. Yup.
Facts.
During your time, did you see yourself being able to combine it in any way? No, I particularly wanted it to be separate. And I wanted it to be separate because I was very aware of the fact that that it would not be a vibe for people. And so I very much so took the path of saying, like, I'm going to talk about makeup and I'm not going to talk about my job because I do not want to get into any trouble. It still ended up being a problem anyways, so that should tell you something. But I was not in the, I was do them together like two jobs. Oh, here's what I'll say. During your time, did you see yourself being able to
Combine them together like two jobs. Not talking about the law online at all. Oh, I think she maybe more so like time management, maybe doing them both at the same time.
Oh, I was doing them both at the same time. Yes, I actually have a TikTok probably coming up on this. I haven't filmed, I just need to edit it. There were a number of things that I did. Not fun. I started waking up earlier. That was the whole beginning of my 5 a.m. wake ups. I did not wake up at 5 a.m. in law school, would not recommend, because I was going to sleep at like 1, 2 a.m. But I specifically, like when I started my job, I was like, there are some things that I want to handle before I go to work. I'm going to have to wake up earlier to do them. So I added more hours to my day. I multitasked a lot more and a lot mindfully, like more mindfully. So my commute, I sat on a subway to go to work 30 minutes one way each day. So that's about an hour of my day where I can't work on work. Like I'm not going to open my work laptop and expose confidential information. So I would edit videos on the subway. My content while I was doing both, I shifted it a little, not shifted it, but I relied more on like maybe skincare videos because I'm always going to do skincare. And so like, let's talk about skincare because I'm going to do it anyways with the camera in front of me now. I scaled back on brand deals and partnerships for sure. And I set certain boundaries with my management agency. Like it was pretty clear and they would always relay for me. Like if you are a brand and you're asking me for a video to create a video, if you ask me for the video on Monday, the soonest you're going to be able to get it is the following Monday. Why? Because I only film on weekends. So I need a weekend in between when something is asked for and when it is due. Because I have another job. It would be very clear. Eni is not a full-time content creator. She works full-time as such and such. Like she needs an additional so-and-so time to get this video done. So all of those things were how I was able to kind of manage the two while I was managing the two.
All right. And you know, we have one more person with their hand raised. I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have time for one more?
Yep, one more question is good.
All right, and I want to let everyone know this entire conversation will be available on Spotify and YouTube before the end of the week. So if you want to replay anything, send it to someone to get tips, it will be available for you as well. So no pressure. If you're jotting down notes, don't worry, you'll have access to it later. All right, Grace. Why can't I find your name? Grace, here we go. All right, Grace, you are up.
Hi, thank you. Oh, sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for this time. This is definitely informative. I was tuning in between meetings. I'm still at work. So I guess my question is, as far as breaking into the whole content creation thing or just this whole not business, but what would you recommend or how would you say what would it look like as far as getting your feet wet, as far as just putting yourself out there and, growing and things of that sort? So what would be a good way to basically infiltrate this new realm is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One thing I would say is important, especially when I was starting. I know the circumstances are different, but when I was starting, having some sort of role models in a way, like their content, like is like this is like this speaks to me and this is what I'm going for. And it doesn't mean you're gonna copy them. It just means like if I could choose someone who describes what I'm like, who represents what I am trying to do, like I would have someone. For me, when I started, it was Ijama Kola. She in particular, like had gone to Harvard, was at Columbia getting her PhD. She was an influencer, but also an academic. And that was like pretty much, I was like, that is like exactly, like precisely, like that's the vibe, right? Like, and there are other people who like, maybe if I'm focusing on makeup, I could be like, this is what it is for me. But like, in terms of like someone who kind of fully represented what like I was trying to do, or just spoke to the vibe I was trying to give, like she did. And I'm obviously a different person, but it was helpful to kind of just have someone to look up to and look forward to and look up to in that way in terms of their content. Because it kind of helps, like keeps you guided and lets you know what's possible. Back then, it would have been like posting pictures consistently, like anytime you go somewhere, take a picture, things like that. Now I would say it's like pictures are back, but also still videos. And so think about what videos you can deliver consistently. That's why I'm big on series. Like my beginner makeup series is also just like when I don't feel like thinking, when I don't really like have ideas, I have a series and I can build that out. It doesn't necessarily need to look like instructional. It can be, you know, there's some people who are doing solo living diaries, right? Like some people who are doing home decor, like they're making their space and they're consistently changing their space. Something that like you can create in video form that you can do consistently, because you can break it down into parts. Because one part might hit nobody, but the second part might hit a lot of people. The third part might hit a medium amount of people, things like that. So series for me are really helpful, I would say, for getting your feet wet, because it's like built-in consistency. But generally I would say videos, pictures. TikTok, it used to be the like, oh, you have to start on TikTok if you want to be a creator. I think that's still true, but I think TikTok is starting to feel more Instagram-y in these days. And so it's not as easy to grow on TikTok as someone who's just starting out. But in at least in one way, TikTok, it was a lot easier for me to post like no one's watching, because like you don't know who is going to reach one day. And like I find that when you just post for vibes and to post for yourself, that like, but as long as you're consistent, like typically that's when growth will come. So I would say post on TikTok, but TikTok, like have a lot more fun with it. And Instagram, like think about ways you can be consistent and think about what you're working towards and what you're trying to like emulate or represent.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, everyone. I think those are all the questions. Eni, thank you so much. I know we went over and I know how busy you are. This was so good. I don't have people texting me. I'm trying not to look at my phone, but saying how much fun they had, how good this was, how much insights they got from it. So again, anyone, if you want to listen to this back, it will be on YouTube and Spotify by the end of the week forever. So you can always replay it and get your best tips back. Eni, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.